So we're here on the top of the Whitney Museum balcony looking out over Hudson River. We're here for a 4-day whirlwind tour of all the art museums in New York, covering the history of modern art. So let's descend the staircase going back in time to examine the evolution of modern art. In the world of modern art, trees have left behind their roots in their rush to keep up with the pace of change. During World War II, many artists emigrated to America. As a consequence, the center of the art world moved from Paris to New York. New York is thus the ideal place to make a study of modern art. New York artists moved away from nature as the subject matter and moved to urban landscapes, and from there to abstraction and subconscious automatism. Edvard Munch's painting The Scream represents human anxiety and the search for meaning when confronted with a chaotic new world. Scream applies perfectly to the shock of observing a revolutionary new artwork. Our tour includes the Buffalo Art Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of New York, and MoMA. Each museum tells a complementary story of the evolution of modern art. The fundamental dynamic in the art world is that artists learn and copy from predecessors. So each step in the evolution of art is a launching pad for the next stage. In the monumental transition from the 19th century art styles to the 20th century, certain key artists made breakthrough stylistic changes, and all subsequent artists stood on their shoulders. Just a connection to nature. I mean, a lot of this is portrayals of nature as the main inspiration of the time.
Romanticism took a turn into landscape painting, especially in Germany with Caspar David Friedrich and Turner in England, romantic landscape paintings showing the sublime. That painting is on this street, 2 blocks up.
Jean-Auguste Ingres painted a portrait of Josephine in 1851, done in an almost photographic realist style called the academic style. It was the end of an era due to the invention of photography.
And this is a photograph of Ingres, the artist, okay? So I always think this is ironic because there you have the end of this type of painting, the end, historically, okay?
Due to photography. In 1871, Richard Maddox invented the silver celluloid dry plate, which greatly improved the photographic process from the old wet plate system. By 1888, Eastman Kodak introduced the first commercial celluloid roll film. As a consequence, the need for a realist academic style of painting became obsolete. Camille Corot was a leader of the Barbizon school in France. They painted plein air outdoors to capture the transient effects of natural lighting. They took full advantage of recent developments of portable tube paints. So in 1841, John Rand, an American portraiture artist, invented tube paints. Tin tubes made painting a lot more affordable, convenient, and it made the paints portable. The Impressionists followed in the footsteps of the Barbizon group by painting outdoors on plein air. They abandoned the neoclassical style and used bold, loose brushstrokes and bright, broken colors that relied on optical blending from a distance. Monet spent the last 25 years of his career only painting water lilies, about 250 paintings, and in the end, They became colossal in size, lost all sense of landscape, and delved into the world of abstraction. Van Gogh was a post-impressionist, and he pioneered expressionism. Whereas impressionism is objective, expressionism is subjective. The subject is painted through the filters of personal emotion and imagination. Van Gogh was a master colorist, and he fully leveraged the affordability of new synthetic pigments developed in the 19th century.
But the main thing about Van Gogh is genius for color. His color is unbelievable. High-key color, a lot of complementaries. He would take the most mundane subject, like just a bunch of books on the table, and they just glow. The color would just like...
1889. As far as I'm concerned, he's the start of the modern era. Him and Gauguin, they were really the one that I think started modern art. 1892, Tahiti. And there's another Van Gogh.
Gauguin, Yellow Christ, and Tahiti tree over there. This is 1889, I believe. Spirit of the dead looking over the living. And again, look at the space. Gauguin said Impressionism was too frivolous in its subject matter. It was too, happy people in a cafe. He wanted more depth in subject. So he was obsessed with primitivism. He thought the primitives had that depth, and he searched all over the world for it. So he got out of Paris, he went to where my grandmother came from, Brittany, very poor part of France. And the people there practice a very superstitious type of religion. My grandmother believed in all that stuff. Anyways, sorry.
Catholicism.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Look at this orange tree. It's completely flat. There's no shading, because that orange is pushing forward to the picture plane. Everything in this painting is very flat. And outlined in a dark outline, now this style became known as cloisonnism. When you see a stained glass window, all the areas of color they appear outlined in black borders because of the lead structure of the stained glass window. So that style of flat areas of color outlined in black lines is called cloisonnism. 2 years later, left France and went to French Polynesia, searching for more primitive, powerful subject matter. So let's go over to this painting over here. That's what you can see. And flat areas of color, the space is quite tripped up. And he's very famous for his Tahiti period paintings. There's a lot of critique of how French middle-class imperialists could treat the people like primitives, or quote-unquote primitives. And then, being a powerful male, he could domineer and take any woman he wanted.
So was this Gauguin's girlfriend? I guess he had multiple girlfriends.
First proponent of modernism because he was so far ahead of everybody else.
I think Cézanne was, in terms of evolution, was ahead of it.
This is the beginnings of Cubism here, or the inspiration for Cubism by Cézanne.
Yes.
In 1902, Mont Saint-Victoire.
Cézanne abandoned traditional linear and atmospheric perspective. He painted landscapes as a flat plane with a patchwork of geometric shapes, spheres, cones, cylinders, cubes. Nature was forced into geometric architectural shapes, and depth is created through color and overlapping shapes. For example, oranges advance forwards and greens recede. Harmony is created when secondary colors are painted inside each shape that mirrors other parts of the canvas. Cézanne inspired Cubism. This painting by Braque in 1908 shows beautifully how Braque was studying Cézanne's technique and his own transition towards Cubism.
This is Léger, 1912. It's only like 2 years after Picasso came up with Cubism. The Cubist style was going like wildfire through the arts community.
Planes, you can see them here actually very carefully differentiated planes. So now this would be called synthetic cubism. It's the next step after Cézanne.
So, John,
Yeah.
this was painted only about 2 years after Picasso did his first paintings in Cubism. What caused that wildfire of change?
Explosion.
Yeah, an explosion within like 2 years.
Like even months between 1908 to 1912.
Did Picasso give workshops on how to do Cubism?
No, as a matter of fact, he was so scared that people would ridicule him that Demoiselle d'Avignon, painted in 1907, he put it facing the wall. Like he turned the canvas around. He didn't want, people were always visiting his studio, Picasso. So the world is not ready for this. That's what he said. If I show it prematurely, people just write me off as a kook. But when they're ready to see it, I'll turn it around and they can see it. So for about a year and a half, Demoiselle was unseen.
And yet it changed things very quickly.
Well, after Demoiselle, he teamed up with Braque. Braque and Picasso had nicknames for each other. The two guys that invented the airplane. Picasso was Wilbur, Braque was Orville. Because he knew he was inventing a whole new world of art. They lived together for a number of years, working on this problem of Cubism, how to solve it. And they were very careful. They didn't introduce color until much later. Actually, it was the Delaunay's and Orphism that introduced color. They painted all their Cubist paintings in monochrome, like gray, brown, that kind of thing. They didn't want color to complicate their problem just yet. There's other artists that introduced color. So the development of Cubism was very deliberate, very these are like two guys working in a lab on some scientific problem. It's amazing how that works. Very deliberate.
Okay, this is Pablo Picasso, Cubism, 1911. And this one here is Braque, Cubism, 1911.
Cubism opened the floodgates to modern art innovation. Within 2 years, multiple artists painted in the Cubist style, including Kopka, Delaunay, Picabia, Franz Marc, Kirchner. In addition, it inspired the genesis of multiple new art movements, including the German Expressionism, Italian Futurism, Surrealism, Russian Suprematism and Constructivism, and European Dadaism. The 10 years from 1910 to 1920 were no longer a progressive, steady evolution of modern art. It was a complete revolution.
Here's an unusual rock. Cubist style. It's like post-Cubist style, 1939. So he kind of eventually, I guess, went away from his pure academic Cubism. And the composition is fabulous. I love the idea of the window, seeing it, looking into the distance. Léger, 1914. Léger, women, 1921. Picabia. Francosi. Yes. Guccione from 1913. Giacomo Balla, 1913. 1912, Balla. Capturing motion.
So movement is the key to Italian futurism. They also developed a whole political philosophy, which basically boils down to fascism. During the First World War, or just before the First World War and during the First World War, where they glorified military power, hardware, guns, trains, planes, all that kind of stuff. Into this dredging up subconscious imagery or depicting situations that were like a dream. So this is an interesting example of that. The Italians call this pittura metafisica, or metaphysical painting, but I think it's more subconscious than philosophical.
Not surrealist?
It's all surrealism. I think of Magritte, he's a surrealist, he's a realistic surrealist. You get my drift. But Magritte painted situations that have philosophical edge to it. For example, he painted a painting of a pipe, of a smoking pipe, right? And then underneath the words say, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." So this is not a pipe. Okay, you painted a pipe, and then you write on the painting, "This is not a pipe." You know what I'm saying? Like, it begs the question of what's real and what's imagined and what's intended or not intended.
Malevich, 1913, from Ukraine. Malevich, 1914. Rodchenko, 1920. Monumental Miro from 1925. Canvas staining. Hilma af Klint, which is Swedish, and so the debate now is that she preceded Kandinsky as the originator of non-representative art. Kirchner, 1913. Franz Marc. I don't get to see a lot of Franz Marc. Fighting Cows from 1911.
Franz Marc is using cubism. You can see flat planes, all flat planes. Yeah, actually even transparent planes that are going through each other.
In about 1912, Kandinsky, a leader of the German Expressionist movement, pioneered pure, non-representative abstraction. He had the ability to experience synesthesia, meaning he saw colors when he heard music. During World War I, he moved to Russia and adopted the geometric shapes of Russian suprematism. And finally, he was part of the constructivist Bauhaus in Germany.
Strives to be more like music. Music is pure. Music depicts nothing. Music uses its own materials of sound, rhythm, composition, etc. The pure elements of that art form, it conveys all emotion just through those purely. So part of the attempt at the beginning of the 20th century was for this purity, to ditch everything that was not essential in visual expression and just go with the pure elements of that art form. In the case of art, it's color, composition, line, form, etc. And that's what he's doing here. So these are emotional works, but they're purely abstract. So that was one of the attempts, foundational attempts of the early 20th century. So you see how this has progressed from academic style to Impressionism to post-impressionism, and now cubism, and then what people are playing with in cubism. That's the evolution of early 20th century art.
Matisse, like Picasso, was an iconoclast of modern art. They were rivals, but also collaborators. He was a supreme colorist, and in 1905, along with Derain, created the Fauvist style. Matisse had studied with Signac the Pointillist, so he understood the science of optical color blending. He adopted an intense tropical color palette from Gauguin. As well, he simplified composition into flat shapes, so his compositions were based on the pure elements of design: balance, eye movement, pattern, focal point, and unity.
Monumental painting of the dance. Remarkable for 1909. The emptiness of the top corner, and then the head that seems to draw you in. So there's just a nice balance between filled areas and empty areas. So it's a 1916 Matisse. Like, what an incredible composition for its era. The Moroccans, wow. This to me is a stunning painting for 1916. 100 years ago, nobody was doing this at the time. This is Matisse Odalisque, 1927. Matisse, 1939. Musique.
In 1912, Marcel Duchamp painted his Cubist masterpiece, Nude Descending a Staircase, that outshone both Picasso and Braque. Then around 1913, he again shocked the world with found art, including a bicycle wheel on a chair and a urinal, which he signed. The final major artwork of his career in 1923 was a glass sculpture titled Nude Stripped Bare by Her Bachelors Even. At age 36, he then gave up art to pursue playing chess. Subsequently, his legendary anti-art revolutionary philosophy inspired the Dadaist movement. His glass masterpiece sculpture lets the viewer look at the world through the glass artwork and suggests that the world is itself a work of art.
Man Ray, Rope Dancer, 1918. Broadway, Boogie Woogie by Mondrian, 1944. And what's behind it? Morgan Russell.
During World War II, many of the leading artists moved from Europe to New York, including Dali, Ernst, Breton, Mondrian, Leger, and Hoffman. Abstract expressionists were active in the 1940s and 1950s. It included two main groups: the action painters, including de Kooning, Gorky, Franz Klein, and Pollock, and the color field painters, Rothko, Clifford Stills, Pollock, and Frankenthaler. The process of the action painters is to have a gestural response dictated by the unconscious, but at the same time constrained by a preconceived rational construct.
Nevelson.
Many of the works of the color field painters are monumental in scale. The focus is on the sublime and the concept of infinity. And the purpose is to lose the viewer in a nihilistic space.
Okay, guys, you can see in this room,
here, I mean, that's why it needs to be so large, right? Because if you stand right in front of you, it sort of let sort of surround you or envelope. And you know, you don't get this experience from a photograph, but if you walk into it, okay, it's close enough to, you'll experience spatial depth, right? There is space and there's optimal space happening.
Yes. Just feel the action going on.
Well,
The gestural work.
I mean, he's got a brush maybe about this big, and he's not touching the canvas. He's usually just slashing.
But still, it's pretty hard for him to reach all the way from
when you
there.
throw the paint, it goes, right?
Yeah. Is this the pinnacle of modernism?
that is one of the endpoint pinnacles of modernism. Absolutely. Dissolving long-standing dichotomies in painting. It's one answer to the question, what is the ultimate purity of form, color, space, figure ground, depth, and surface.
Robert Rauschenberg. We're here at the Met to do an art tour. It's another one of the stops on our whirlwind tour of the art scene in New York City. This is the instruction at the Met. Avoid gathering. I'm not sure how you do that. We're inside the Met. It is definitely well attended. There's quite a crowd here.
The Met has an excellent collection of 19th century sculptures by Rodin. Rodin achieved the epitome of modern figurative sculpture. Each figure expresses intense emotional drama and passion, from joy to anguish.
This was finished in 1891 by the great French sculptor Rodin. He is the end of the figure tradition in sculpture. He was commissioned by the government of the city of Calais in France. Well, after Michelangelo, I don't know if you know David. Have you ever met David? The hands are huge. Yeah. Other parts of his body are not as big as normal, but the hands have massive hands. So Rodin's inspiration was Michelangelo.
Another Rodin. This one's very dramatic. The Martyr. Really intense pose. This is spectacular. Expressionist sculpture.
Just like painting, Cubism had a revolutionary impact on sculpture. Brancusi pioneered modern sculpture. He innovated away from realistic figurative subject matter to minimalist abstract form. The MoMA sculptures by Brancusi date from 1910 to 1920.
Lipschitz, 1928.
A special exhibit at the Met called Vertigo of Color focuses on Fauvism. Matisse and Derain in 1905 and 1906 painted in a high-hue color scheme called Fauvism.
This is fun. Matisse portrait of Derain, and here's a Derain portrait of Matisse. is a painting by Duran of another artist, Etienne Terros. Fishing boats. All of these are painted in 1905. Painting by Duran. The subject is Matisse. Duran. Portrait of Collioure, 1905. Duran. The Faubourg of Collioure. Sailboats by Duran, 1905. The Port by Duran, 1905. Mountains by Duran, 1905. Environ, 1905. The Pier. Sailboats, 1905. And this one's just called Collioure. Again, 1905. Another Matisse landscape, 1905. Woman with a shawl, Madame Matisse. Andre Duran, Fauvism, again, 1906. In 1906, Brock took up the Fauvist path and painted this landscape.
A special exhibit at MoMA focuses on Picasso's work in 1921 when he lived in Fontainebleau, painting alternately in Cubist and in neoclassic styles.
1919. Three musicians, 1921. Three women, spring 1921. 1921, red chalk on canvas. Still life, guitar, 1921. Guitar on a table. Bottle and a packet of tobacco, 1921. Card player, 1913. Picasso, 1928. Painter and another amazing Rothko. And right next to it, a Frankenthaler, Helen Frankenthaler.
The Met had a special exhibit on Cecily Brown, a modern abstract expressionist.
But de Kooning is definitely, I think, her major inspiration.
But de Kooning often does like this scraping off and repainting technique, which I don't see her doing. She's just using that very expressive all over brush movement. But I also like the way your eye gets moved around.
Yes.
You know, so you kind of, you're not just stuck in one corner, like there's some empty space and then there's like little detail areas that you get drawn into. But you're always, your eye is moved around. He sketches off old masters and then uses the compositional framework of that and then puts this expressive gestural layer over that. It looks like a salon.
In 1943, Frank Lloyd Wright was commissioned to design the New York Guggenheim Museum. It was finally completed in 1959.
the Guggenheim Museum, the best part is getting up to the top and looking down. Yikes. The Guggenheim, yeah. Okay, good.
What was his name that did Better Angels of Our Nature?
And it's built on the water, this outdoor island garden.
The Museum of Modern Art, or MoMA, has the largest collection of 20th century art in New York.
Bowery, sackcloth, 1953. Milari, composition 9, 1957. Pollock, 1950. This is a Lee Krasner, 1957. Franz Klein, 1962. Barnett Newman, 1951. Nevelson, 1958. Rauschenberg, 1959. Jones, 1955. Jasper Jones, Stars and Stripes. The interaction between painting and symbols, icons. Lee Montagu, 1961. Warhol, 1962. Rosenquist, 1962. Oil on aluminum. Jeff Koons, 1988, porcelain. Modern art in the MoMA. So any tour of New York has to include the event that kicked off the 21st century, which was the collapse of the World Trade Centers. Behind me is Oculus. It commemorates the event, and this is the new World Trade building.